going to have it. Again, Ecclesiastes chapter 3 and verse 1, to everything there is a season and a time to every purpose under the heaven. Our text is dealing with punctuality versus tardiness. Now, last week went through punctuality. We'll be going through part of that again. But today, the first part is going to be on tardiness. And our text and the verses that follow, and I'll let you read them. We read them last week, verses 2 through 8. Most of you are familiar with them, that there is a time for everything. It makes it clear that the sovereign God who has appointed all things in eternity that come to pass in time has set an example of punctuality that is unrivaled by anyone. So it's a Christian character, and the Christian character is punctuality versus tardiness. Once again, God is always right on time in his execution of his sovereign will and purpose. Our timing and God's timing is not the same. He does all things according to his will and purpose, and his time is his time. We can't put a schedule on that because we never know what he's going to do. He does, but we don't. He has never had to apologize for being tardy. Though we cannot duplicate God's flawless record of punctuality because of our human frailties, we are nevertheless called upon to follow his holy example. Now, if you turn over to Ephesians, and we read this last week, we'll read it again. Ephesians chapter 5 and verse 1. Ephesians chapter 5 and verse 1. Be therefore followers of God as dear children. Our goal in life, our Christian character should be to follow God. And not just in some things, but all things we should be following him. I mean, that's scriptural. I mean, you can't get away from that. Punctuality is the disciplined ability to be prompt in one's appointments and consistently on time in his various engagements throughout the day. So, my wife and I always have a little disagreement here. She says, I'm not on no schedule. And I says, but I am. You may not be on a schedule. Those of you that work are on a schedule. You can't get away from it. You got to get up at a certain time. You got to leave at a certain time. You got to be at work on a certain time. Unless you're Brother Bill, and you can get to work anytime you want because he's the boss, so it don't matter. But he is punctual, and I'm sure that is one of his Christian traits. Punctuality is a virtuous character trait that shows respect for other people and their time, and we went over that last week. It's a respectful thing. If you don't have any respect, then, it is what it is, but it's not right. So what we want to look at, first of all, this morning is the trouble with tardiness. The trouble with it. It's the problem with being tardy. Tardiness is the habitual practice of not being on time with regards to one's appointments and engagements. If you're one of those people, I would suggest that you change that because you're going to get a bad rap. You're going to get a bad name for your tardiness. And I don't think you really want that. If you have, my wife and I were talking about it this morning, yesterday was the 5th, and all the rents are due on the 5th. But have the couple that's always late, always. And the issue is when they drive in and out of the park, they only one way out and one way back in. They pass the place where they're supposed to drop the check off. 10 times a week, 20 times a week, maybe 3 or 4 times in a day, and they fail to put in it. 2 that I call, oh, it's in my car. I went right by and didn't drop it off. Well, that's fine for you, but it's not fine for us because we've got a deadline to get it into the bank for the company. So, but they don't care about that, see. It don't matter to them. And brings up a good point. Well, how do they pay their bills? How do they pay their electric and their gas bill and their car bill? How do they do all that? Well, I said, maybe they're tardy all the time with it. I don't know. But it becomes a practice. It becomes habitual. And it really, people don't realize of how much disrespect that is to people that are trying to do their job, trying to do what's right. I mean, if you were that tardy at work all the time, you wouldn't be there long. And even when I worked at GM, if you were constantly late, there was a reprimand for that. Not much of one, but there was a reprimand for that. There are many excuses which we offer for our tardiness, but the only one that is valid is that we just didn't get started early enough to get where we are going on time. And I said it last week, I won't go into it all, but we have family members, or had family members, still have family members that just can't make it. It just don't make sense to us. They just can't make it. Perhaps the main reason why we are tardy is due to procrastination. Now, if you're a procrastinator, you're going to have a tendency to be tardy. If you're a procrastinator, you're just going to keep putting it off and putting it off. And I'm usually not a procrastinator. If it needs fixed, I'll fix it. But I've got a few jobs at the house that I have procrastinated on because I don't want to do them. That's the bottom line. I don't want to do them. But they need to be done. So I've got to do something. And soon, because before long, winter's going to be upon us and it's not going to get done. Rather than preparing for wherever we are supposed to be, we put it off by taking time to drink and that extra cup of coffee and read another article in the newspaper or whatever else you do before you go to work or do whatever. My dad was notorious. April 15th at midnight, he was going to the post office. Every year. He'd be up. From the time he got home from work after supper, he'd be at the kitchen table. And about a half hour before midnight, he was out the door. So he could get it in the mail. He was one of the greatest procrastinators I'd ever seen. And it wasn't just the taxes, it was other things. But people, that's the way they are with their taxes. Not me. Got to get it in and get it done and get it over with. I don't want to have to wait on anything. Just do it. And what this does when you procrastinate, it reveals a measure of disorganization and indifference operating within our lives. So it kind of tells a little bit about ourselves when we do it or when we don't do it. Tardiness will hinder an individual's testimony and progress within the workplace. Now, Brother Ross, in his book, quotes 2 other men's writings here. W. Matthews said, "Nothing inspires confidence in a businessman sooner than punctuality, nor is there any habit which sooner saps his reputation than that of being always behind time." And that's the way some people live their life. They're always behind time. W. Fisk said, "I give it as my deliberate and solemn conviction that the individual who is habitually tardy in meeting an appointment will never be respected or successful in life. So that's kind of something to, grab a hold of and think about when, and if you're not being successful in your business life, then that could be the problem. Tardiness usually has a negative effect on the life of others. Now, one thing I never could tolerate is that for a pastor to be late. I mean, there are circumstances, but I could never tolerate that. And there was one up there, Mansfield, I'm not going to mention any names, but one Brother Ray. But there was one up in Mansfield. He'd come in 10 minutes after starting time every single Sunday. And I wasn't there no more, and I told him, I said, I'd have thrown him out. I said, I would just tell him, don't come back. You've got your people sitting there ready to start the services, and you are habitually tardy every Sunday. There's no room for that, folks. As the pastor, as the leader, as the shepherd, under shepherd of the flock, you are to be there on time before I get here. I won't say how early I get here because my wife is going to strangle me as it is. But, we get here early enough that I can, I had a long drive. I can relax. If there's something here that I need to do, I get it done. There's always usually something. I can't be late. It's not in me to do that. I have to be early, if not at all. I read an article one time that says, don't ever be early for a doctor's appointment. And I thought, well, how stupid is that? They said, because you're always going to wait a half hour longer or 45 minutes longer than what your appointment is. And that may be true. But I'm usually there before the doctor is, especially with my chiropractor appointments. I'm there before he gets there. I said, well, man, I'm glad you made it. But I'm early. My appointment is until 8:30, and I'm early, and I have things that I can sit there and do while I'm waiting. I used to go to my one hair appointment when I had a barber clear up in Augsburg, and I'd always get there an hour before, because if I didn't get him first, he took so long to cut my hair that I'm going to be waiting a long time. So I was there an hour before he even showed up, and I was the first one. And I even do that today. I'm 45 minutes early. My barber's earlier than normal because he knows that, I'm a pastor and I'd like to get on with my day and so on and so forth. So he accommodates me by being there. Now, the second part of this is perks of I didn't really finish here. Tardiness usually has a negative effect on the life of others. It's nothing positive about it. It has a negative effect. It is often a source of aggravation and friction within the home if one of the marriage partners is punctual and the other is tardy. So, I know we want to blame our wives for putting on their makeup and this and that and everything else, but that's not always the case. So the second point here is the perks of punctuality. What are the perks? There are rewards for this. Punctuality goes a long way in the development of a good testimony. It usually reveals that a person is conscious, respectful of others, diligent, disciplined, and orderly in his manner of life. When partners install the virtue of punctuality in the lives of their children, they are doing them a great service by starting them on the path of punctuality early in life. Everything we do reflects on our children. We should know that. A child that cannot make it to school on time will undoubtedly be a source of aggravation for his employer later in life. If you don't get started early with school, then it's going to carry over. When I was at work, we had the same people. Just wasn't one guy, but the same people every day, every single day. we're late. Now, my wife and I bowl in the senior league, and that's no excuse. Senior doesn't make a difference. We don't start bowling until 10:30. So there's plenty of time. I don't care how old you are. If you're going to bowl, but every week. We're already throwing our practice balls, and they haven't showed up yet. Same ones every week, week after week. Now, what's wrong with that? No, nothing's wrong with it unless you got to bowl them, and then it becomes a problem. I mean, I'm not in a hurry to get out of there, but I don't like to mess around. I like to get up there and bowl and have fun and do whatever I do, but I don't have to wait on somebody, Then it becomes a chore instead of fun. So we do our children a great disservice by failing to teach them punctuality by precept as well as practice. It just should be something that they learn from us. Punctuality is an aid in efficiency, productivity, and prosperity. Turn over to Proverbs, if you would, 22:29. Proverbs chapter 22 and verse 29. Seest thou a man diligent in his business? He shall stand before kings. He shall not stand before mean men. Generally speaking, an individual who makes it a point to be on time will accomplish more than a person who is habitually tardy. Well, it makes sense, right? Being punctual will serve to brighten an individual's attitude throughout the day. Why? Because you got there, you're ready to go, you have a few minutes, you're not like, I have been late for circumstances, but, maybe one in a million. But when you do that and you're late, it's like hurry, 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 rush, 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 and it takes the rest of the day is that same mode. You can't calm down, you can't settle down, you can't get into the just relaxing and try to do your job. Everything's push, 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 rush, rush, rush because you were late. When you start the day by being on time, it sets the tone for the rest of the day. So that's what I mean. If you're late, I know my wife and I, we very seldom sleep in, but when we do, it's like, wow, it's 6:30, it's 7 o'clock. We're almost an hour behind. And it feels like we rushed the rest of the day, And it's like, what happened? And it's because we're, decided to sleep in for a change. But you can call it a schedule, you can call it whatever you want to, but when it's time to wake up, it's time to wake up. Get out of bed and get with your, get with the program. But again, when you wake up late, are unprepared, and are tardy, you will often carry a negative attitude throughout your day. And the reason is for the negativeness is because you start out being late, and it's just like, again, you're kind of rushing around to get things done. You may even get caught up, but it doesn't feel the same, see? See, if you come into your workplace and you sit down and you relax, when I come here, sit down, have a cup of coffee, go out and do whatever I need to do. Just relax. And, of course, I got a lot going on up here, So I've got to try to collect my thoughts and try to, just relax so I'm not so tense, and because I was late getting here and I let you all down. I don't want to do that. I don't want to let people down because I was late getting here. So I think it's trying to think, 3 weeks. I think it's 3 weeks that if a habit can be broke within 3 weeks, a habit can be made within 3 weeks. So if you do the same thing over and over and over and over again for 3 weeks, it becomes a habit. To break that habit, you have to work on that. To break it, it'll cost you another 3 weeks to get it down. But it can be done. So you can break your habit. No matter what it is, you can break that habit. You just have to work on it. And of course, this is cultivating Christian character, and that's something we want to do. We want to do it God's way. We want to do it for God. We want to do it for His honor and glory and not our own honor and glory. So everything we do, whether you're working or whether you're not working, you should be doing it for the glory of God. I've always been convinced that whatever job God's given you, that's your opportunity. See? That's your opportunity. Because wherever you're at, in your job or your workplace, you basically have a captive audience. Where are they going to go? They can't run out the door because they're stuck. They're there for the duration of the shift. So you have a captive audience. What more of a better place or a better time than present the gospel to a lost person? So you need to use that wisely. That's why God has you there. People say, no, you got this there because we're making a living. No, He has you in a certain place at a certain time because there's somebody there that needs the gospel. That's just the bottom line. Brother Ross finishes this portion of his book when he says, with a couple stories, he said, a woman who was punctual and early at a public worship was asked how she could always come so early. She answered, "It is part of my religion not to disrupt the religion of others." A true story concerning punctuality. When a secretary of President Washington, excusing himself for being late, said that his watch was too slow, the reply of Washington was, "You must get a new watch, or I must get a new secretary." So, others are relying on you, not just for yourself, but they're relying on you to be there on time, to be punctual, to be ready to go, to be ready to start a new day. And if we're late sometimes, and I don't think anybody here has that, but sometimes when you're late, the board meeting is already going on. The foreman has already told the people about the day. This is what we're going to do for today. This is our schedule for the day. This is what we're going to do. And here you come in late and you have no idea. See? You don't know the first thing about what's going to happen today or what's going to go on because your schedule could be entirely different than what it was yesterday. So that's the other reason to be punctual, to be on time. And it's like I told you last week. I'll tell you the same story. I knew a man in Mansfield. I worked with him, went to church with him. And he's married to a Korean woman. Well, her parents were of a good sort, let's put it that way. They were high up in the society. And their philosophy over there in Korea is that if you're a minute too early, that's showing disrespect. If you're a minute too late, that's showing disrespect. They expect you to be there on time, on the hour. Not a minute sooner, not a minute later. So, when we look at other people's culture, it's not unusual that people are respectful and punctual. And it's in their society, it's in their daily living. And they think if it's not that way, then it's a disrespect to them. So when you take that and put it in the sense of, are we disrespecting God for not being punctual when it comes time to church? We're here. Nobody was late like last week, but you weren't late. You just were running behind. But if somebody constantly is doing this, then it's like, okay, it is disruptive in a sense. It never disrupted me. I'm just glad that they're here, that they came late. I'm just glad that they're here. I'm not worried about it. There's a lot worse things could happen. But it may be for some, it may be a deterrent for others if they're late, if they're tardy. You're dismissed.